Tutankhamun, and the end of the Amarna period. The Restoration Stela. Part 2. The Restoration Stela inscription, properly speaking, begins with a characterization of the state of the country at Tutankhamun's accession. The temples and cities of the gods and goddesses, starting from Elephantine as far as the Delta marshes, were fallen into decay, and their shrines were fallen into ruin, having become mere mounds overgrown with grass. Their sanctuaries were like something that had not come into being, and the buildings were a footpath, for the land was in rack and ruin. The gods were ignoring this land. If an army was sent to Jahi to broaden the boundaries of Egypt, no success of theirs came to pass. If one prayed to a god, to ask something from him, he did not come at all, and if one beseeched any goddess in the same way, she did not come at all. Their hearts were weak because of their bodies, and they destroyed what was made. Legrain presumed this portion of the text made specific reference to the effects of Akhenaten's revolution on the cults of the traditional gods, an interpretation which has held down to the present. In the mid-19th century, the Prussian expedition to Egypt and Nubia under the direction of Carl Richard Lepsius copied another post-Amarna period text with a similar passage. Carved on the wall of a rock-cut temple at Akhmim, it credits Tutankhamun's successor, King A, with the intent to restore a temple of the local god Min which had fallen into ruin. Hormab, too, claimed in his coronation inscription to commission new statues and renew wrecked sanctuaries. Skepticism is not out of place when it comes to understanding these texts to refer specifically to the consequences of Akhenaten's policies, since throughout Egyptian history a new king was customarily credited with re-establishing order, as it had obtained in earlier times. Detlef Frank traced this genre back many generations to before the foundation of the Middle Kingdom. Even if the mention of neglect leading to decay and ruin be understood as an allusion to the years Akhenaten occupied the throne, an interpretation of the last sentence cited above, as a reference to the images of the gods, led during the heresy goes too far. Certainly revenues were diverted from the income of the temples of other gods to Aten's cult 18, but, as has been clear for some time, Akhenaten did not order the closure of the temples of all traditional deities, nor were representations of them along with their names attacked throughout Egypt. Outside the Theban region, active persecution was directed almost exclusively towards specifically Theban gods Amun and Mut above all, but Munthu as well, if less consistently. At Thebes other gods suffered because their cults were practiced there in conjunction with the worship of Amun. The policy of restoration, as far as it can be traced outside Thebes, amounted essentially to recarving Amun's name where it had been hacked out under Akhenaten, often in the personal names of earlier kings, and restoring the god's desecrated figure. That the text of the Restoration Stela affords Amun pride of place reflects the necessity to restore him to the preeminent position he had enjoyed prior to Akhenaten's reign, precisely because attacks had centered on his cult. The only other god specifically mentioned by name in the body of the text on the Restoration Stela as a beneficiary of the king's largesse is Ptah, the creator god and patron of artisans. Both epithets applied to him south of his wall and Lord of Anktoy refer to Memphis where his cult was centered. Ptah's presence, in contrast to any other god besides Amun, is explained by another passage. When Tutankhamun determined to effect benefactions for his father Amun, he was residing in a palace founded by Thutmose I at Memphis. It was only natural then that the chief god of Memphis should be cited alongside Amun as a recipient of the king's favor, even if the benefactions allotted him were not so grand as those for the king of the gods. Ptah's new processional bark would have only 11 carrying poles, by contrast to 13 for Amun's. According to the text of the Stela Electrum, embellished with lapis lazuli, turquoise, and every other precious stone, was used to fashion images of Amun and Ptah, as well as those of other, unspecified gods. Sanctuaries were built anew and endowed to guarantee the supply of offerings for the daily ritual activities which were typically mentioned in this genre. The king also asserted that he ensured the smooth functioning of the cult by appointing priests, by sending maidservants of the palace to be temple singers and dancers, and by providing slaves from the tribute of his persons capturing for the workshops attached to the temple. These last have been called prisoners of war resulting from Tutankhamun's military activities, or at least those of his chief generals. It is not necessary, however, to interpret this passage literally. Amenhotep III, whose reign is known to have witnessed only a single military campaign in Nubia, made the similar claim of assigning children of the chiefs of every foreign country out of plunder of His Majesty to work in his funerary temple. It would seem that such wording is another stock phrase.